pretty spectacular. This is actually my first time meeting him in person. He is a TV personality and psychotherapist, and I just can't wait to hear what he has to say in regards to mental health on this evening. And he's very entertaining. Like, don't let the title fool you. He is all kinds of, what's a good word? Exuberance. You guys, please give it up for psychotherapist and TV personality McGill Jr. You better come on! You requested this song, and it fits you so well. Go ahead, sing. Come on. No, because they're lazy. I felt the power in your words.
I love that song though. That's a powerful song.
Did you just hear that?
I did.
Michael.
Thank you for playing that song. That song means a lot to me. When I'm on different television stations and they'll ask me, what's your walkout song? What do you want it to be? It's often that song because it really encompasses a lot of my life and who I've been, who I am, and who I want to be. Being able to live with freedom, freedom, liberation.
Now I actually like the song. Okay, so, you know, BET, you know, like the black films that be coming on, it's always that song. Like,
really?
What is that hair show movie with Queen Latifah? I think that song's in it.
Okay.
Beauty Shop. Like, it's like another black national anthem. So I like it now because you came out.
I mean, when you really think about this, I'm such a lover of music because music moves people. I had a really good friend of mine, her name is Rosie, and she passed away of Alzheimer's, and I watched her in her process of transitioning. And at 95, 97, she was literally dying before my eyes, and I sat with her for about 15 hours. And although she lost the ability to really communicate, she lost the ability to have conversations, she didn't know my name, the songs that we shared together, she remembered. So I would hum certain spiritual songs and things like that. Music is powerful. Music is one of the last things to go when you die, psychologically. Music is powerful. And the lyrics to that song, she says, I'm taking my freedom, I'm claiming what's mine. Yeah. And I'm going on the charts, I'm going in the car, wherever I choose to go, I'm going far. I'm living my life like it's golden.
You are such a church kid, I can just tell. Because that's like a whole sermon.
Yes.
I'm taking my freedom.
I'm taking.
What's the words? I don't know the words.
Yeah.
And
I'm taking my freedom. I'm pulling it off the shelf.
I'm pulling it, not putting it.
From a spiritual, psychological, so my background is in psychology and sociology, so I'm always thinking about conditioning, how we have been conditioned to show up in this world. And so many of us have put or allowed our freedom to be put on a shelf. She's a black woman, she's heavy set, she's not light skinned, that the entertainment media tends to perpetuate is beautiful. She's saying, I'm taking my freedom off the shelf, pulling it off the shelf.
Okay.
Hey.
Don't you preach to me, I'm a black woman, I'm not, you know, big, I got a big back. I'm big.
Not a big back.
I do.
My mother and sister just educated me on what that was.
Michael,
I didn't even know what that
when
was.
I sit in the car, it's like you just feel like, I don't want to say rolls, maybe, okay, yeah. I was driving and I was like, man, what is this flap I feel? Where are these folds?
That is
so
so
I'm
funny.
unbigging it. It's not happening right now, it's happening in the gym.
That
You
is
know
so
what I mean?
Hey.
Okay!
And that's what you do, one day at a time, one roll at a time, one crunch at a time. But really, it's the diet. Abs are made in the kitchen.
Thank you for affirming my rolls.
Yeah, hey, roll, it's a pie. Man, nothing wrong with a cinnamon roll or two. Ain't nothing wrong with that. A little icing on the cinnamon roll, make sure it's warm. You know.
Okay.
I don't
Warm. That's the anointing when it's
the
warm.
anointing. I don't know where she was going with that because she was a little loud back there.
What are you doing? Michael.
Yes.
So, why psychotherapy?
Oh,
Like,
man.
what inspired you to go into that? Like, that's some heavy stuff.
It is. It's. There are blessings to it and there are burdens to it, but it's really redemptive work. I got into this field because I know what it's like to feel unwanted, unloved, unknown. I know what it's like to be searching for identity, searching for affirmation, searching for love. I know what it's like to feel forsaken. You know, so many of us, I don't think we spend enough time as people, especially Black folks, we spend enough time really doing a lot of unpacking of our baggage, and all of us have baggage. We carry baggage. If you are a person living in this world, if you have had a childhood, you have baggage. And too many of us don't understand how we perpetuate the stuff that we don't evaluate. So it's just a fancy word for saying we carry in our life from season to season, cycle to cycle, relationship to relationship, all of the stuff we don't take time to unpack. You know? And so I said, when I first started going to therapy when I was in high school, and then I had another therapist who was so instrumental in my life into affirming me and blessing me and encouraging me. And it was something I said I want to help people do, unpack their baggage.
Okay, quick question again, because this is talk show.
A quick answer, yes.
Okay, so I have noticed on Facebook, especially social media altogether, a lot of my peers are making a lot of statuses about anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
Do you feel, I'm trying to be careful with this because I don't want to answer it for you.
Okay.
But why is that? Why, especially in our generation, I'm seeing the transparency, the vulnerability of, hey, I'm depressed, hey, I'm dealing with anxiety, and why is that?
You know, it's multifactorial. On one hand, we know that if I can just put a little spiritual stuff into this, we overcome by the word of our testimony. And that's not just biblical, it's real world stuff. You know, often, if you want to become free of something, you've got to be able to release yourself from the shame of what you go through. And shame is such a spirit killer. Shame eats at the soul, it eats at the mind, it eats at the heart. When you can begin to speak about the stuff you are going through and have gone through, it's liberating. So that's one thing. But I think we live in a generation now where mental health is becoming, it's not there yet, but it's becoming more normalized, because the more people, I wrote a post 2 years ago about going through some trials and challenges and losing and experiencing grave loss and feeling like I'm in deep despair. And so many people wrote me, literally hundreds of folks wrote me about that particular post, that status on Facebook, and said, wow, now I feel like I can, and they wanted to share some of their stories with me. And some would even say, one lady even pulled me aside and said, so you go through that too? Well, now I don't feel so bad about what I'm going through. Yeah. And it's like, well, what made you put me on a pedestal that I don't go through? I'm not just as much as human as you are. Yeah. But I say that to say, the more we have people who we hold in high regard, speaking about the ills and the issues of our lives, the more it frees other people. Marianne Williamson says this. She says, when we are free from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates other people. She says our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. She says, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. You get to be bold and bodacious and beautiful in all your glory and all of your story. But the reality is that when people who we're in community with, when they are vocal about their ills and their issues, it frees us. It frees us to know that I'm not alone. Yeah. So when you become free, it then frees me. Yeah. And when I become free, I can then unconsciously free somebody else. And when they become free, it becomes a ripple effect. The more people talk, that's why it says the truth will set you free. The truth sets you free. When you speak the truth, it sets you free. And so,
I'm free. Praise the Lord.
You are really a church girl. You're talking about me.
Okay, can we take a pause? Because he just said I was a church girl, and
I don't even know what that is.
I think I am. What are you doing? Okay, I want to see if you know these songs or remember them. Okay. And you guys too, if you know these, sing it.
Come on, Kirk.
Yes! I thought I was I had my long jean skirt on when this song came out. I was really holy. And Kirk Franklin made gospel cool. Yeah. And he was rapping, so I was like.
And it's interesting, him being free in his own way. Think about how much resistance he got to that, though.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's everybody's cup of tea. He has some songs that I like, some songs that I don't always care for in particular, but that's with any artist. Yes. But how much resistance he got for simply trying to bring people to Christ in his way, because it was different from the norm.
Oh man, that's
but the courage it takes.
That's a whole other conversation.
A whole other. Go ahead with your next question. I'm sorry.
We have another song because I want to see if we don't have one. We were just playing. That was the only song we gonna play tonight.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Again, because it's a talk show. I need to stop saying that. So, there's been such an influx of podcasters, predominantly male, that get on these platforms and they're very divisive. Am I saying something? Okay. Thanks, guys.
You gonna name some names?
I don't know their names.
Okay.
But why do you feel like there is this divide between men, especially it seems like more so with black men and black women? Like, what is this?
Give me an example of what's an example of the divide you see? Because at first I thought you were talking about Kevin Samuels or Kelvin and Kevin. I don't know. So tell me what you're talking. Give me an example.
So just you get on the podcast and the guys are like, well, I need somebody like my grandma who's gonna cook and clean and do this and do that, but then it's like it's very hypocritical because on one end they want us to be not dependent on them, but then dependent on them.
Yeah. We call that a juxtaposition.
Exactly.
Yes.
Even just our independence which in my opinion is not even independence, it's just being grown. Like us having our own as women, having our own car. You better snap it up, okay? A car, our own house.
Yeah.
We're too independent. And I'm just like, no, that's called being grown. What is that? It's really getting on my nerves.
I can tell. It seems like you're really passionate
about it. It's a thorn in my side.
It is a thorn in one of your cinnamon rolls. I know.
You ain't gotta call them rolls. You weren't supposed to
You called them rolls.
I know, you weren't supposed to repeat it. You supposed to
I affirmed you. You said it was a roll. I just wanted my
maybe a dinner roll. Not like
a dinner roll.
Roll is really intense. All that sugar.
Okay.
Nice roll from Ryan's.
But no, that's such a good question. I think two things. One, people have not been taught the skills of how to effectively communicate their vision. People have been taught how to have combat, not communion. We think that communion is just in church where we do our pass the juice and the crackers, and I used to love that. Give me a little more of that grape juice, right? That's what so many of us, and then I will gracefully say the church, capital with the capital C, has not also done an effective job, in my opinion, of educating us on real world issues and real world skills. It's more than just, ain't he all right? I need to know how to live effectively and fruitfully.
Yes.
And a part of that has been not teaching people what it means to build, what it means to create, what it means to sustain healthy relationships. So that's the first part right there.
Okay.
And I'm a part of, we're in the same generation, but the generation before us and the generation before that has failed. And the reason I say that is because people have lived in secrets and lies. Back in 1862, 92, Paul Laurence Dunbar, he was a prolific writer. If you don't know him, I encourage you to look him up. He wrote a poem, and I'm just going to read an excerpt of it. It's called The Mask. And he says, we were the mask that grins and lies and hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. He says, this debt we pay with human guile. He says, with torn and bleeding hearts, we smile. He says, why should the world be ever wise in counting all our tears and hearing our sighs? Nay, nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. And that was in the 1800s when you do just some etymology of, I appreciate your affirmation. That was in the 1800s, and when you do from an etymological standpoint and unpacking where that came from, you see he was talking to people who were recently freed from slavery. And it was a survival apparatus. They would laugh and smile and grin even though they weren't happy. Yes, sir, how you doing today? It was a survival skill. But that was in the 1800s. That began to be a pathology, a big fancy word for pattern that is perpetuated from generation to generation of mask wearing. So when people like the brother says, I want you to be like our grandma, he don't know the wounds your grandmother carried because many grandmothers wore the mask. That's why I'm tying it back around somewhere. Many parents wore the mask. They didn't effectively communicate. They didn't effectively argue. That's why I tell folks, conflict is good. Conflict is just, if I can be, I know some church folks are in the room, but conflict is friction. When you're having sex, friction. Just go, friction is a good thing. Conflict is a good thing. It's the combat that's not a good thing. But many of us have not been taught, we haven't seen, we haven't had the models of what it means to be effective communicators, effective lovers. We don't know what it means to be tender. Because if in fact you want your person, your partner to be a certain way, there's a way you can tenderly communicate that, not going on a podcast bashing somebody. I have yet to see people be transformed by condemnation. But again, we live in a society that will shame you when you do something bad. They will be quick to condemn you. Church folks used to do it back in the day when somebody would get pregnant, they would bring you to the front.
You would be sent out from the praise.
And you would have to repent for your choice. Yeah. Shame. God is not a God of shame. God is a God of transformation, of grace and truth. Sure, but now you can't have, it has to be a healthy balance, grace and truth. Yeah. So anyway, to your point, many people have false ideas of what a healthy relationship is, so that's why they get on these shows and giving this babble. And then the other part is we feed into it because we listen. Yeah. We feed into it, it's drama. We feed into it, we give them the platforms. So if you don't like what they serve, then stop going to the restaurant. Yeah. If you don't believe in what they're serving, and I say this gracefully to so many women because of the majority of my clientele, I got a pocket of men and then a good majority of women, because it tends to be historically some women are more engaged in psychotherapy than men are. But when I'm talking to a lot of women, I remind them, you have so much power, not in how you can control or dictate a man, but you, and this is one thing that I learned from my mother and grandmother, not because of what they did, but because of what they didn't do. They didn't know how to stand up for themselves and say, I'm not going to accommodate that. Wow. They didn't know how to stand up for themselves and say, enough is enough, this is beneath my privilege. They didn't know how to stand up for themselves and say, you don't get to treat me that way. They didn't have a healthy boundary, and that's not to shame them, it's not to attack them, it's to teach from the wounds. From the wounds come wisdom. Yeah. And so my point to you is, women have a lot of power. Mm-hmm. You have power in what you accept and what you don't accept, in what you allow and what you disallow. But when you don't know the power you possess, think about Whitney Houston, somebody that was prolifically talented, gloriously gifted, magnanimously a miracle with that voice. It was miraculous, it was angelic, and she ruined it because she didn't know the weight of the gift. She didn't know the miracle of the mantle. She didn't know the power of the promise within her. And so many of us are walking around oblivious to the power, oblivious to the gift. Now, I'm not saying manipulate. I'm saying if you stop allowing some things, perhaps some things might not be happening. You gotta know your power.
Boundaries, that's hard.
Boundaries.
I'm learning.
We're learning together.
I'm in therapy. Okay.
I'm in therapy. My therapist just sent me a message today, said I ain't heard from you. I said I've been traveling. I'm getting back there. But yeah.
But you made a point. You said it's, as far as therapy is concerned, women are more.
Historically, women tend to be more open to therapy, but that's also societal. It's a conditioning. Mm-hmm. Because people have been, well, let me let you answer.
Go ahead. I was getting to that. Why is that?
Yeah, it's conditioning. It's conditioning because we have historically been taught, especially with black folks. And I'm black, so I can talk about us. If you ain't black, you say amen and keep learning and listening. But historically with black folks, I've been blessed and so privileged to go to 20, 30 some odd countries. And when I'm in these other countries and I see how men comport themselves, and I'm not saying they're better than or anything like that, I'm saying even from just a masculinity standpoint, their masculinity is in question based on how they comport themselves, based on how they walk, based on how they talk, based on how they dress, based on we as black people tend to be one of the main groups of people that put men in such a box. If I see one more, now talk about my rolls, my cinnamon roll. If I see one more post about men can't eat desserts, men can't use a coupon, men can't do this, or it's attacking their sexuality, their masculinity. We as a society, we've done that, specifically to black men. And so if you ubiquitously hear you are not man enough for being empathetic, you are not man enough for being vulnerable, you are not man enough for talking about your feelings. If that has been the model for you, and if you haven't seen it, you can't do what you haven't seen. So if it has not been modeled for you in a healthy way, how do you know that it's appropriate to go talk about feelings if all you see are messages that you ain't enough? And so many men don't realize there's power in therapy, there's power in being vulnerable. Do you know the courage it takes to talk about your ills and your issues? It's so much easier to bury stuff. And ask me how I know. Am I alone on this? I can't really see y'all, but is it just me? It is so much easier to bury your garbage, to bury your drama, to bury your trauma. But here's what I know. Feelings and issues buried alive don't die. They show up in other areas of your life. It's like burying a person alive and it comes right back up. Like you're burying somebody, Frankenstein alive, and his hand is coming out of the ground. That's what happens when you bury your issues. And the other part is that the issues we go through, if you don't deal with them, they're going to deal with you. They're going to be all up in your tissues, meaning tissues in your body. So you think I didn't know that. The body bears the burden. Yes, it's all interconnected. Everything you go through plants a seed. In fact, we know from the research, when you don't deal with trauma, it can be intergenerationally passed down.
Are you kidding me?
We saw from people who went through the Holocaust that when you actually saw their DNA, we could test this, we would see their DNA researchers. Let me not say because I wasn't part of that particular research team. But we see from the DNA how it's been changed by trauma. Trauma changes you. So when you don't deal with it, you, in the words of Whitney Houston, you better lay low. You don't deal with it, it's gonna deal with you. Yeah, it's about that whole concept of intergenerational trauma. Have you ever looked at people? We do, with all of my patients, I always do a genogram. I do a genogram to see.
That?
It's essentially, what's that? I love your questions.
Thank you.
It's essentially a diagram, and you begin to look at things like patterns, illnesses, all that good stuff, and you see how interconnected it is. It's I'll just say this to be very transparent, because I'm very transparent about my life. I don't think it's by happenstance that the majority of people I see who have issues with alcoholism, it's also been in someone else's life in their family. I don't think it's by happenstance that people who deal with other types of ills and issues, hypertension, all those things, it tends to be connected. That's the transfers. You know, people in church call it a generational curse, but we in psychology, the word psychology, we really can see how it's more than just a cliche, it's a thing. So if you don't deal with your stuff, it's a possibility you can pass that down.
Wow.
I know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So if I don't get over some things, or get through them rather.
Work through. It's not all, because here's the thing, some things will always be tender. You know, I deal with this concept of me and dealing with the emotional neglect from my biological father and the brokenness of that relationship, particularly around Father's Day. And I often let folks know that, you know, that is a time when if you are regularly seeing other people be fathered and you missed out on that, it can be 50 years later and you still have a wound.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Healing is multifactorial. Healing goes in layers and cycles. One day I can be up, the other day I can be down. It's about progression, consistently trying to progress. But some things you can be healing, and some stuff will always be tender. Some stuff you will never not be, it will always affect you. And that's okay, because you're human.
Yeah.
You're human. If you've been abandoned and bruised and wounded and dropped on your head and cussed out and beat up, you might feel that for the rest of your life. Now the intensity, you want that to decrease.
Right.
And you want your trigger to decrease and your response to decrease. You don't want to be weeping and wailing all the time and cussing folks and fighting them. But some stuff will always be tender. But yeah, like you said, if you don't heal it, it's a high possibility. You can repeat it, pass it down.
Repeat it?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I really didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you want to open it up for questions?
Absolutely. If people have the courage to ask.
Because y'all been acting real shy at moments.
Yeah.
And none of y'all are shy in this here audience. I don't know what's going on.
Does anybody have
Any
a question?
questions?
I do.
Okay. So 1 and 2.
I
And
feel like Oprah for
and
real.
then 3.
Okay, what's your question?
Okay, so my question, I know that you stated basically like, you know, people need to address these things and all that. We see every day, like she said, on social media, where people are being more and more vocal because people don't feel like that they have other people that they can go to talk to. So we're seeing people make the posts, we're hearing the cries and everything, but you know, I feel like there's more of a narrative where people are making fun of people or using that as a way to have something to use against them, and these people are really hurting. And we're seeing we're seeing this in family and friends.
Yeah.
Because all around people will say, "Oh, I'm here for you," but you know, these people have people that they do have, and they truly don't have anybody because you know they're getting on social media every day.
Yes.
Oh, this is what I'm going through, and it's just like, okay, at some point, when do we offer, you know, or what is it that we can do as individuals to help each other out to kind of help, because you know we're all in this together, really, honestly.
Right. That's such a powerful question. Thank you for your courage to ask that. And she's right. I know we have one person over there, Kim, in terms of helping keep somebody next to you on how you want to do it. But that's a really good point. Two things. The first thing I'll say is, in reference to social media, here's what I've learned about our stories that we carry. Not everybody is qualified to hear your shame story, to hear what you've gone through. Let me just say that. Not everyone has the capacity, the volume, the velocity, the ability, the intellectual capacity, the intelligentsia to handle your trauma, your issues, and everything else. We've got to be aware of that there is a potential consequence that when you post your drama on social media, if you ain't at least reached a layer of healing, people gonna come for you. You see what I'm saying? And so when I see posts like that, if I have the capacity, the time, and if I have the relationship with them, I will DM them, pull them aside and say, hey, it looks like to me that you're bleeding. How can I help you? Or let's have a conversation. I just want to get a sense to better understand. This is the power of psychotherapy. Yeah, we do good work if you have a good therapist. Mind you, not every therapist is good. And then you have a good qualified therapist. Two things make psychotherapy transformational. One, your commitment and your consistency. Two, the relationship you have with your therapist. The research strongly suggests it's the relationships that transform lives. Real quick, Harvard they're doing a current 80-some-odd year longitudinal study. Longitudinal means over the course of like a map, it's just going from 19 this to whatever year we're in, and they've been trying to research what is it that makes a good life. They've researched all types of people, races, demographics, poor, wealthy, all that good stuff. We know that once you make after $77,000 a year, your happiness level don't really increase as much. We know that if you live in a big house versus a small house, yeah, it feels good to live in a big house, but after a while, the endorphins kind of go down. What makes a good life are the quantity of the relationships you have. We know that it helps people's central nervous system are healthier, their brains are healthier, their brains actually grow and don't shrink. Loneliness kills. Loneliness is literally worse than smoking 10 packs of cigarettes a day on the heart. We know cardiac health is impacted by loneliness. So to your point, the key really at the utmost is building relationships with people where you can be a safe place to land. Let me tell you something. I went through a really traumatic breakup about a year ago. And it was one of my dearest friends who called me and knew that I was in a spiritual crisis. As a clinician, as a therapist, as a teacher, a TV person, whatever, she knows me for me. And she says, number one, I will always be cheering for you in the stands. And number two, she said, you are safe with me. I will be a safe place for you to land. You're not too much. You're not too heavy. We all have these three irreducible needs. One is to be seen. One is to know we have value. And the other is to be heard. If we do more of that, we'll see less of the bleeding on social media. So, long way to answer your question. I'll be brief for the next ones, but I think that was a good one. We see people who are bleeding and they're in trouble, and when you see it, stop laughing at them and mocking them. Yeah. People are in trouble. They behave badly because they're in trouble. We laugh at them going crazy on social media, fighting and cussing. They're in trouble. So tell that to the shade room, because you notice when you posting this stuff.
Okay, so you answered. You answered her question at first, but now she has another.
Okay. I'm gonna get to you too. I do apologize, but go ahead.
You kind of spoke on your relationship with your father.
Yeah.
How you experienced rejection and abandonment. What was some of your steps that you took to overcome that?
That's really powerful. Thank you for asking that. Let me see. A few things. One, I had to start by having some honest conversations with my family. Again, we overcome by the word of our testimony, and the truth sets us free. I was so bound by not wanting to hurt their feelings, not wanting to tell them the truth, because I didn't know how they would handle it. I was so bound by the stories that we tell ourselves. Well, maybe they'll respond. I don't want them to cry. They ain't gonna cry from her. They ain't gonna die from her feelings. And you can be graceful about it, but that was one of the biggest things that got me to a place of being able to get to a place of acceptance was first having conversations. You know, my stepfather, he was murdered some years ago, and he and I had a very challenging relationship. It was challenging because for a first part of my life when he was there, he was a safe place. When he would come home, I knew I could go to sleep when I heard the garage come up. When he would come home, I just knew I could go to sleep because he would be there to protect my mother and me. And then he got into the streets, he got into drugs, he went to jail multiple times. There was a time when I was much younger and he and my mother were getting into an argument, and I was in fourth or fifth grade, and I got up and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And because he was on whatever substances he was on, he jumped on top of me and was choking me. And then began to, and I kid you not, and I can talk about it now because I've dealt with it, and I continuously deal with it. And I remember running around the house, my mother trying to defend him from beating me and choking me. That was an experience I'll never forget. So being able to actually talk about it, and I began to say to my mother, "Hey Mom, I was wounded because of the partner you chose. Your inability to choose a good partner, your inability to protect yourself, your inability to protect me wounded my soul. We overcome by the word of our testimony." What's the next verse? "And the truth will set you free." I began to have a conversation with my biological father. Hey, no excuses, only accountability. Begin to have those conversations, and then learning how to accept people for who they are and what they can do. That is hard. If I cursed, I would say that's some hard shit. And I know there's probably some church folks in the room, and that's okay. I don't curse on Sunday, but I may say a word or hear
I was like, Michael, wait, you did cuss. Just right
I did. Sometimes a word may come out.
Oh, that's
but
all right.
that is some hard stuff, especially when these are people who God designed to take care of you. We have this hope and this expectation that they will be the ones to nourish us and nurture us. But they don't always have the capacity. You know, T.D. Jakes one time talked about this when he said, "I had to learn that I'm a gallon-sized lover. And some people in my life, they ain't as voluminous as me. A gallon is big, but you're dealing with little bitty pipe people." And sometimes our parents lovingly, gracefully, are pint lovers, and they cannot give us what we need. Learning how to accept it and make boundaries, learning how to accept it gives us a layer of peace. And I'm still on that journey, but the more I begin to have resolve in, Michael, he can't give you what he don't have. You need 5 pineapples, he only got 1.5.
Yeah.
You gotta keep it. And I give myself the grace and the space to weep. One day, I was on the elevator, I saw this man who I imagined in my head could be my father, and just start shedding a tear. And I gave myself the grace to say, you wanna be fathered in this moment, and it's okay. Humanity. I hope that answers your question. It's so multifactorial, but those are just a few things.
What's your advice for dealing with triggers that not everybody knows that they're triggering you, but you don't put those reactions of the trigger on them?
You gotta help me better. Can you give me an example? I'm more of and I don't want you to necessarily tell your business, but just give me an example. Right? You're talking about your cousin or your friend.
An argument.
Okay.
You might say something in an argument and it just brings back a past relationship.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know how to express to you that I'm not trying to trigger you, but in the same breath that I don't want you to express your trigger as deeply because I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying that the person you're talking to is triggered, or you are triggered? And we're using you as an example.
Triggered.
Okay, the person you're talking to.
Yeah.
So in terms of having, it starts with honest conversations, doing what you can do, first things first, to create a safe space for people to hear you. People don't hear when they're defensive and when they're being offended. That's just the first thing. That's emotional intelligence 101. Creating a safe space for so it starts with phrases like this. Hey, I really hear what you're saying. It sounds like to me you're saying you really need A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So you make it very soft. I'm hearing you say, this really bothered you because I didn't show up in this way, and it made you feel abandoned. When people feel heard, they're more inclined to listen and to receive what you have to say. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to be graceful but yet and direct and say, hey, can you tell me why this experience really bothers you so much, or what made you react the way you reacted? Because I'm trying to get to know you better, or I better want to understand, or I want to love you in a better way. When you phrase it with tenderness, as in some try a little tenderness, when you phrase it with tenderness, in my experience, and again, I don't know all the details, and I hope I'm at least answering part of your question, but when you phrase it with tenderness and curiosity, those are the two things. Be tender and be curious, versus being defensive and dogmatic. Be curious. Hey, Kim, I know, I want to talk to you about something. We were having a conversation yesterday about the dishes, and I know you really felt disrespected when I didn't honor my commitment to you.
Yes, I did.
And it sounds like that it really bothered you. Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
So I would say, first, can you tell me more as to why that bothered you so much? And then I would say, now can I talk to you about the way it was communicated to me? I want to better understand what made you respond in that way, because I'm not used to that. And I just want to let you know that that response really was challenging for me to hear, and it also put me on the offensive. Can we talk about the responses that we give each other? You see what I'm saying? So it's not a blaming conversation. It's now often we do that. We blame and we shame. You don't talk to me like that, but the way you talked to me was foul. And but it's not tender. If you want to meet people, you got to reach them. And that's it. The reality is that we all have triggers and trials and traumas, and many of us, the last point that I'll say is, many of us are not aware until either people or life's experiences bring to our awareness what a trigger is. Half of us are in our unconscious mind. Have you ever seen an iceberg? The majority of the iceberg is under the water. That's the unconscious mind that permeates, that dictates our lives. Most of us live in the unconscious mind. We don't take time to figure out why we behave the way we behave. But conversations like that can support people. Does that make sense or answer your question?
It did.
It did? Okay. I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Asking.
That was awesome. Well, it's about that time.
It's about already?
Yeah, I know.
I've enjoyed my time here. Thank you for having me.
You were dropping so many gems. Like, low-key, I feel like I was in Bible study. And you were like T.D. Jakes or something.
With a little cuss word.
Just a little bit. It's okay. It's fine, you know. But where can we see you? Where can we contact you?
Yeah, on social media or Facebook at Michael McGill Jr. or at McGillSpeaks.com. So Michael McGill, Google Michael McGill Jr. Yeah, the junior in there, I'll be the first one to pop up. So Michael McGill Jr. or McGillSpeaks.com.
Awesome.
So it has been a pleasure. I'm so grateful for your hospitality and you allowing me to be a part of this, and I hope that I have encouraged or given you something to think about. My biggest thing is how we can be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And once we know differently, we can do differently, but we gotta first get the knowing.
Yeah. But just to be transparent, I think I shared this with you during our phone call, but this is a really special day for me personally because last year I went through a really, really traumatic experience. And it was someone that I was with, and we had been broken up for 2 months, and they decided to get on social media and just destroy me. And he went after my brand because I take pride in my brand. And I'm still nowhere where I want to be. So it was definitely intentional on his part. And I was so devastated because I pride myself on being positive and being a light on social media. Like, if you know me personally, that's just who I am. That's not a facade of mine or anything like that. But he was really trying to convince everybody otherwise. And that really tore me up to the point where I didn't want to unalive myself. I didn't want to be here. And having a platform, having to sing, having to be in front of people all the time. I didn't want to. Like I would cry on the way to my gigs. I would cry. I would cry, sing, and then cry some more. Because for the first time, I was so worried about what people were thinking of me. And it was such a terrifying feeling. I used to walk in the room pretty confident, you know what I mean? Wasn't worried about anything like that. So through therapy, of course, through friends and having community, it really helped me to get through because I'm telling you, I did not want to be here. Again, not unaliving myself, but I was in a very deep depression, and I didn't want to be on social media no more. I mean, just imagine people calling you, "Are you okay?" And you're like, "No, but can you stop calling me?" But you want people to be concerned, but it was that bad. It was horrid. And so, in trying to keep up with my brand, the good thing last year, I was still busy. God was like, okay, don't interview anyone, but I'm gonna keep you busy. You know, I hosted the red carpet, the People's Choice Awards. People were asking me to come on their shows, and it was like I still was busy, and it's like I wanted to give up, but I couldn't. It's like I was positioned to keep going, and I hated that. And then telling people to keep blooming when I was like, man, screw that. I don't even care about that. I'm buried right now, and I'm not the person that treats Facebook like Moesha's diary. That's just not me. I don't like telling everybody my business like that. And that's not being secretive. It's just always been my, it's just never been my thing. So fast forward to now, I wanted to do a live show. I've never had an audience before. I just thought it would be really cool. And so I reached out to Crystal, and I was like, I need a venue. She's like, okay, I'll get the venue. She said, when do you want to do it? I said, maybe July or August. And she said, I think we should do it in June. I'm like, you don't think that's too close? Because this was like the first week of April. And I was like, okay, maybe we can do it. So she found the venue. She said, it's going to be the week of the 19th in June. I said, okay, I don't care what day it is. No, I want it to be on a Saturday. And I looked at the date, and it was the 24th, and that's the day that all that went down last year for me. So another thing about being a creative influencer, people are expecting you to respond a certain way. Some people wanted me to retaliate. Some people wanted me to keep quiet. I didn't know what to do. But I feel like it's not by accident that a year later I'm here with you guys, and I'm able to speak my truth finally, because I haven't really spoken out about it. So you guys being here on this date, I'm rewriting my own history.
You are taking more freedom.
So, I appreciate y'all flowing. I know there's some spots in the show I was like, okay, Kim, what we doing? But I appreciate your patience. You guys are definitely making history and really just carving a new space for this day, so that when I look back, it's not like, oh no, it's like, hey, I had my show and my friends and family came out and it was beautiful. So I appreciate you for coming out and just speaking about mental health and giving us some tools to step away. And all my guests, everyone, yes.
But that's such a powerful reminder that sometimes, and that's one of the gifts of therapy, Kim, is we all need perspective.
Yeah.
Because in the midst of trial and challenge and trauma and adversity, we think we are the only ones. We think we are doomed. We think we need to end. I believe that people who die by suicide, a part of it, I know that it's a disease. I know that the brain changes when people are suicidal. It's what we call suicidal ideation. But what I believe more than anything is the people ain't necessarily trying to die. They just want the pain to end.
Yeah.
They just want the bleeding to stop.
Yeah.
It's because we have not, they don't know that if I can just keep going, there is something better on the other side. Mm-hmm. And so what a powerful story you just shared, that the difference a year makes. Ask us how we know. We've had some similar stories. The difference, if you just give it time, that's what blooming is. Blooming is
Don't you preach
time.
to me?
Blooming is, think about what it takes real quick, because we gotta go. Think about what it takes for, I was in Aruba at a butterfly farm, and just seeing how, and this butterfly came and sat literally on my finger. Okay. And I saw how it would come, literally how I would see the caterpillars that were in the cocoon cocoons
Yeah.
and the process that it had to go through, do you know that it literally has to go through an acidic process where it wraps itself up in acid, it burns itself. It has to go through some trauma of dying and suffocating itself just to be reborn. There is power in blooming, but blooming is a process.
Yeah.
There is power in the process, but blooming is a process. Sometimes we just need perspective. It's called perspective taking. We need perspective that nothing lasts forever. It might feel bad today.
Yeah.
It might sting this morning, but if you just give it time, I guarantee you, I'm a living witness.
Yeah.
It does not last forever. So what a powerful way for you to take your freedom off the charts.
Yes.
And rewrite the narrative, rewrite the story, and to affirm and declare. What's that phrase, y'all? Nothing lasts forever. Nothing lasts forever.
Thank you, Michael. On that note, you guys, thank you so much for coming out. I love you. We have dinner together